that the way we look at things in Sri Lanka is about everyday things, not monuments. And this is one of my favorite images. Sorry, okay, I've just done the wrong thing. Uh, okay. Can I go? Can I go back? Okay, never mind. You can see that. Okay. Uh, Generally, we are interested in small things. And when I went back to Sri Lanka in 1977, there was no literature on the contemporary architecture or the traditional architecture of Sri Lanka. So we had a lady called Barbara Sansoni who just died a month ago, who has a shop called Barefoot. She began to collect old buildings, and I helped to put this first book uh, in about 1997, after about 15 years of work, of the traditional architecture of Sri Lanka. Uh, so, uh, Next, okay. This is my type of architecture. Why you get a little building perched on a rock. It's a rest pavilion. It's called an ambalama. Stunningly overlooking a landscape. And as I said, there are few places in the world. I mean, everyone says buildings should relate to landscape and nature. But in Sri Lanka, we have a tradition of where buildings are an integral part of nature. You know, they don't relate to one another, right? So this building is a part of that nature. I'll show you some images. The next, that's that. You can see it's perched on a rock to keep out damp and termites, right? You can put a sari or a sarong, then you have privacy and you can cook in the middle. It's on the way to a pilgrimage. So there are pilgrims' rest pavilions. Next. And you can see that you can't imagine this without this landscape. The landscape becomes perfect because of the building. So here we have a tradition, and that tradition continues right up to things like Jeffrey Bawa's garden called the Lunuganga, where I lived for 10 years. Okay, next. So this is a thing of a paradise celestial water garden in a temple painting. Okay, next. And this is one of my favorite ancient called Kaludia Pokuna, black water pond, because it's surrounded. You enter here, there's a stupa here, there's a double platform here and a library underneath. And to be ordained for the monks, you have to be surrounded by water, so they do it in the shape of a boat. So you get this, the Sinhalese had this amazing representational attitude, and though everyone thinks that it's only the Greeks and all who understood visual illusion, the Sinhalese absolutely had it at the same time. Next. So this is Kaludia Pokuna, where you go up the path. Next. You can see. Next. So this is the ship, and that is the boulders opening up like a lotus. But you can see this man-made line accentuate what is natural. Next. And you can see in this photograph, that is a man, the boulders, that's a man-made, and the monk completes the picture. So you get this perfection of all things living and what's man-made and natural, an integral part of what's going on. Next. So these are other pictures of it. Next. You can see that this is a library, and that's a double platform. That's a meditating method of the Buddhists. Next. That's an actual picture of it. Next. And you get this representation that there's water flowing through it. But that's all. And you can see man-made rock integrated to the natural rock. So this is a part of our living traditions, which I begin to observe and understand to influence my work. Next. So you can see here also, that's just imaginary understanding of a stream flowing through. That doesn't really happen. Next. So this is again another picture. Next. And you can see there's boulders coming as a retaining wall. And this is 3rd century BC Brahmi inscriptions, throughout South India. And you can see the monk completes the picture. And that's a cave temple. Next is one of my favorite it's called Sasarua. Next. And here also you get Tampita Viharas, which is raised on the ground to keep a dam, but it also means that the tooth relic could, or the image house was there. But again, you can see that when you have a roof like this, it is a little heavy, but clay birds are put on the ridge tile to make it an illusion of floating. Next. Next. Okay, so that is me with my class visiting that thing. Next. So my work, because I had done the Barbara Sansoni Ronald Lucock book, I started collecting buildings, and that was published 8 years ago. It has been sold out, and they have just republished it. Next. And I mean, I was also fascinated, but this is one of the temples in India, in Kerala. Things you can hold in your palm. So I have about 3 measured drawings of buildings in 3 things. There was this little temple in Kerala, and by the time I presented my work in Kerala, all the temples, the big ones, had neon lights, plastic flowers. It's a sort of thing when you begin to understand things are going into decay. So the neighbor said, no, you wait. The priest will come in half an hour. And sure enough, the priest comes in a little motorbike, bare-bodied, wearing his burshti, and he actually brings actual oil and diyas and fresh flowers. So I'm just fascinated by this type of small, beautiful buildings. So I get it recorded from Sri Lanka. Next. So we get that. But this is a digital drawing. I mean, I managed to get some students. So you enter here. You get a veranda there. Again, it's blank. It's very much like a Sri Lankan building. But it's almost perfect and intact, But the sad thing is, it'll very soon disappear. And like Barbara, my thing is that if I love a building, at least what I can do is try and record it. And there are millions of these buildings in India, but unfortunately, I can't find a record of it, I wish I lived here, but then I would have gone mad because I would have had to record these things with no funding. Next. So that's me with my mentor, Jeffrey Bava. And it's better to say the sort of things that influenced me. That is to say that he was a non-talkative person. He never really wanted to make major statements on architecture. Most architects, including me, have very clear views of how architecture should be. He never spoke about it. We only find a very general 2-page statement he made in his whole life on architecture, and only one interview in Bangladesh. But his architecture, unlike everything he was taught, I mean, he was taught at the AA, was a receding architecture. That is to say that the architecture shouldn't jump in your face. That is not the way architecture is done or taught in the world. So it should be, for Jeffrey Bava, architecture should be quiet. It should be a tranquil space. It's a space in which you should be able to meditate. And the things that influence him, I mean, essentially his first degree was in English. He did English tripos, that is, he got first classes in the first year, second year, third year. But a lot of his friends took him to see house and gardens in England, France, and Italy. And before he actually came back and started doing his own garden called Lunugaga. Then his cousin came and said, you're going to run out of money. Why don't you go and formally train yourself? Then you can enjoy your life using other people's money. And that's precisely what he did. He went back to the AA, got himself trained. But because he had started doing his own garden, and he had seen our own heritage, though he never admitted it, he had very clear views of a very quiet architecture, Okay, next. So I was he was first known to the public because of this white book done by Mima, and I helped him. I mean, he had two friends called Jean and Christoph from England who put this book together, and I was a local counterpart. So he generally approved. I mean, Jeffrey did things in a very curious manner. I mean, he never did everything by himself. He was very good at getting other people to do his bidding, right? And so he went up and down from England to meet Jean and Christopher and me, and we communicated. And this wonderful book came together. I mean, I think Mima also did their first book on Charles Correa, but after this, they did a revised book on Charles Correa too. Next. So this is my office, curiously enough. So every day they fold it, but now I have two more people who work on the other side. Next. That is my dining room, which is my favorite contractor who has worked with me for about 32 years. That's my engineer, who eventually became Jeffrey Bauer's engineer too. And that is me. And this is the sort of, we don't have any formalities. It's a very open house. It's completely this thing. And everybody knows what's going on. I mean, that's very simple. There's nothing called, except there's probably going to be some Indian music at the background. Next. So that is my vehicle. And that's my little dog called Kalu. He's 9 years old now. That's my domestic, Kumar, who has also been with me for 30 years. And I built, you will see, I think I'm showing it. He has built his house. I built him a house next door to mine. Next. So I also taught architecture, about contemporary architecture. I control half the course about design, drawing, and so on. And the technical things are done differently, half the course. But that was done on Saturdays. But Fridays and Tuesdays I did. And I did a thing called experiencing architecture. I took all my students. I mean, I think that even Jeffrey would say that the only way you can learn architecture is not in a square room, by going to see things. So we spent half our class was looking at buildings, right? Next. So I'm starting with my SOS Children's Village. SOS is it's very well known in India, that generally children belong to an orphanage. In SOS, children belong to a person called a mother. And a mother brings 10 to 12 children in a house. So if it's a family, they think 10 houses make a village. And to integrate into the neighborhood, they have schools, kindergartens, mothers. So this is the goal. And I'm pleased to say that SOS themselves admit that out of about 600 villages they've done in the world, that this is probably the most beautiful. Next. So here, that's a road. This is the office building. That's a garage. That's for the maintenance officer. And this is the senior co-worker, which is the village director. Then you come here. That's a kindergarten. Or you can go to the village, which has rocks. So the buildings were integrated into the rocks. And because we had no money to build this, we did it. This link is done within a grove of Aralia trees, frangipani trees, which is there. Next. So that is the entrance. So you can see that the vista goes to meet the pavilion. And at that pavilion, I used the rest pavilion in a contemporary way to this thing. Now, we use concrete rafters because we wanted to be ecologically friendly. And we use a stone where the granite meets the earth and is thrown by the quarry. The only thing is that it's slightly moist, so that you have to pest control it and have it under eaves. So that seemed easy enough. These buildings, given any other project with generators and all, these projects came cheaper than that. Next. Furniture, all that. So this is office building. That's a computer center. That's where the village director sits. That's a medical center. That's a mother's club. Next. So that is, but this is to do with children, whether you paint it white or black or color, costs the same. So I started begin to use color with the help of Barbara Sansoni, who is an expert on authority on color. But you can see we salvage old doors and windows because it gives character to the building. Okay, and it's cheaper. It's probably half the price of a new door and window. It's just that I think the difference between a good building and a bad building is in a good building, which is a happy building, you have to spend more time doing it, Next. So you can see, now that's an old column, colored cement, these tiles inset. Next. That is the avenue of trees with a rest pavilion at the end. Next. So so you can see that it is not separated from nature or demands attention. It's a part of nature. Next. So that is one of the family houses. I'll show you the plan. SOS is very clear that if a house is more than 1,400 square feet, the mother can't maintain it. But if it's less than 1,400 square feet, you can't put 10 people in it. Next. So here you have a double height space, 4 bedrooms with the toilets in between and the kitchen. I think in the whole of Asia, I actually put the kitchen in the front because then the mother can supervise the children playing in the common spaces. Okay, next. So, and in typical Jeffrey Bawa tradition, drawings are done after the buildings are finished. Next. So these are, each building was colored separately to give it its own character. Next. You can see the colorful rafters which can span large, that's an outer kitchen so that dogs can't get in. Next. Each house has old doors and an old box. Next. But this is based, now we go to the Barefoot, the fabric house, and says we don't want 54-inch cloth. Can you please give us 36-inch but put a design input? So the sponsors of this house gave flowers to do a wall hanging. So the house becomes personalized and each house is different because it's painted differently. Next. So you can see the detailing. This is traditional Sinhalese detailing also. Okay, so though it may be contemporary spaces and all, traditional detailing is incorporated so that they are not alien to the people using it. Next. So this is a box window where the children could read a book, sleep, and it becomes additional space. Next. So you can see the mother working in the outer kitchen. Next. So this is the aunt's quarters, so that in case the mother is ill, an aunt takes over for the day. And you begin to understand detailing. That is to say that if I brought this thing, this is a 2-story building. This is a single-story building meeting a 2-story building, but it's set back so the eave hits it. Otherwise, it will jump out. So it's a very also looking at detailing from old buildings and learning from it. Next. So this is you can see you go there and that's a vista. Right? These are the aunt's rooms. That's a community dining. Next. So you can see that this is the aunt's room. That's what I said, that if you set it back, the roof just goes and hits it there, and there's guest quarters upstairs. Okay, these are the aunt's rooms. Next. So you can see that the plaza, central plaza, has rocks, and the guest veranda overlooks the central plaza. Next. So this is the senior co-worker house, which has a 2-bedroom with a kitchen again overlooking here. Next. And again, the same idiom. Next. So here from the central plaza, again you go down, so there's a pavilion, but all these rocks are become a part of the building. Next. Another view. Next. So that is from the pavilion looking back at the central plaza, and you can see the rocks being incorporated in. We didn't change any, we didn't move rocks. We put the building with the rock. Next. So that is with a tree growing in the same pavilion. Next. So this is a roofscape. Next. Yeah. So next, they're going down, and I mean this was built during our 30-year war. I mean, not 30-year war, the Southern insurgency. I used to go to the site past dead bodies burning on tires. So then I used to take a little pleasure painting a wall a different color. And these used to be 3 rupees, which is probably 1 Indian rupee in Sri Lanka, which nobody was buying at that time. So I incorporated in the parts. Next. We have Portuguese Sinhalese decorations in the wall murals of temples. So I use these as a source of inspirations for the children's play frames. Next. So this is a play frame. Next. That is the kindergartens, which also double up as youth holiday camps. There are the toilets outside and a kitchen. And this is a bo tree under which the Buddha retained enlightenment 2,500 years ago. And the children tell their prayer each night, each evening there. And if it rains, they go into the veranda and tell the prayers there. Next. So this is the ambience. Next. Yeah. Next. So, I mean, I think that is what it's all about, not about, great philosophies of architecture, but doing buildings which are for people and children and so on. Next. So this is my, this thing in Piliyandala. I didn't do the Piliyandala village. It was done by an Indian. So here I'm doing the youth village, and I just want to show you how we use color. Most theories of color is about very restrained, and most Western people who profess theories of color have never managed to demonstrate it. But here Barbara Sansoni did this color. The sort of difference is now, one of the differences between Jeffrey Bauer, when he was asked, he used to ask Ina. Ina asked, what colors would you like me to use? Jeffrey would always say, you can use any color you like as long as it's black, white, or gray. But I was never afraid of color, right? Barbara is never afraid of color, and she was delighted that I asked to do color. So come and see what this building, though. Jeffrey and I never did similar things, but he was always a guest in my building, first guest, and I was also always a first guest in his buildings. Next. So this is, I found a old cast iron archway, and that goes, you can see you can actually, though it's a diagonal building, you can see into the first courtyard. Next. So this is to show I had done a pavilion so that there's a foreground for the background of the school. Next. So that is the foreground. The school is on the other side. It's mirror reflected. And we, instead of using pinnacles, which shows a religious building, we use birds on pinnacles, which domesticates it. Next. So this is Barbara Sansoni doing color. That's Barbara Sansoni, and that's actually Chanada Aswata and Anoma Piris. That's supposed to be me in a shorts. Next. So here she takes you through the building with a sunbeam. The first courtyard is full of yellow. You can see these purple columns recede, go back. The reds advance. These murals are done by an art master because, SOS doesn't have money for artists. Next. So you will find that here is the first courtyard, and it takes you to the second courtyard. And I remember wheeling Jeffrey into this building in 1989. Next. And that is what you see, that you get columns from ultramarine to lime green, courtyards of shades of red, orange, and yellow. And when I took Jeffrey into this building, he said, get away. And he laughed and laughed and laughed. And I think he did enjoy it. Next. So you could see that these show that this, if you go this way, it contracts. If you go this way, it expands. That shows a clear understanding of color. Color is not red, blue, and white. And in this, any clothes can fit in. Otherwise it looks odd. When you do structured color, things look odd. with day-to-day life. So this is the sort of thing that it doesn't use any money, but it gives life to a building. And that is the sort of knowledge and it's just based on normal things. It's not high philosophy, but it hopefully leads to good results. Next. So that's a shrine room. We managed to get that from a junkyard. Next. So you can see these are portal frames with concrete rafters. Next. And then we added old doors and windows. Next. So these are murals painted by the art master, City Seno, who had studied under a great artist. With the youth, they painted these large murals. Next. So Ina De Silva did this for laminated dining tablecloth. She's a batik artist who was also very, very close to Jeffrey. Next. And what I think this is what I was trying to achieve. And if you go to any Buddhist temple complex, not Hindu, I'm a Tamil Hindu, is that Buddhist spaces are always tranquil. If you want to, the spatial organization creates a tranquility. And I think in circumstances of war, that is what one tries to achieve, a sense of tranquility. Or something that is recessive, goes into the background and allow lives to happen. Next. So I was then asked by SOS that whether I could do a farm project for the youth on two conditions: that I can't charge a fee and the youth must build the buildings. So these are very, very down to earth cheap buildings. Next. So this is, we first built a cattle shed. Then I found this magnificent tree here. So we built a senior co-worker building there. The youth built their own house here. And this is the community thing where the youth participated in camps and so on. And this is the office building, right? Next. So you can see this magnificent tree ties the whole project together. Next. So, I can draw like this. This is one of my drawings. It is a cattle shed. It was done for 10,000 rupees, which is something like 2,500 Indian rupees. Okay. Next. And so how do you make it exciting? You give the cow a window to look at the view. You know what I mean? So this is the sort of things we had to do to make a exciting building with 2,500 rupees. But of course, it was built by the youth. Next. So then the youth also did this was ordered, but they painted it in a sunburst. So this is a sort of exercise that one does with almost no money. Next. So you get these two people only did that door. Next. So you can see that is a magnificent tree which ties the whole site together. And these two columns frame it. Next. So this is from the office going up to that. Next. So this is from the veranda of the community center looking back at the landscape. Next. You can see the tree trunk and the two is framed by the two old columns. Next. This is a kitchen, community center kitchen. Next. And there's a tree growing through that, which is already there. Next. So it is a youth planning the, the water harvest and so on, doing the landscape. Okay, next. So this is the ambience, the final ambience. Next. So that is the piggery and hen house. Next. Next. That's the pigs. And you give a weather vane to make it a little exciting. Next. So this is the youth building their own building, right? And how do you make that exciting? Next. Their director was a close friend of mine. They use earth, nearby earth, with chemifix and salt. Salt to see that it's an anti-fungi, and chemifix to bond. And they use 6 earth tones to paint their building. Okay, next. So that shows you a detail of that. Directed by the village director who lives next door. Next. So this is to also show that you can deal with, this is a factory project. But the two young men who came to ask me to do the project said, we want you to do a happy working environment. Okay. So that was fine. Their father was not very happy about this. But anyway, so it is a very unusual fabric. It was a jewelry making factory. So it had to be a inverted, meaning you couldn't see things from outside. It had to give pleasure within it. So you enter here, there's a security thing here. There are not many cars, because most of them come in bicycles. You go down to the canteen and public toilets and sleeping if you needed to sleep, but there's a lift here and you go up next. So it's an inverted spiral. So from the road you see very little, but here these are double height spaces from which supervision can happen. And up I had to do a terrace because flat roofs don't work without a tile roof in Sri Lanka. Okay, next. So that is, a model was done rather rarely. You can see that it is an inverted spiral which is also a garden, which it makes a pleasant working environment. Next. So that is the entrance. Next. So that is going inside. Jeffrey came for the opening of this too. Next. So that's a canteen. Next. So that picture summarizes. Now that is my understanding of a factory. It is, factories are not like this. But they wanted a fire escape. So the fire escape was outside. But you can see that each thing is a terrace overlooking the other terrace. That's what I mean by a inverted spiral. So that it was completely secure from the outside, but it was completely also joyous inside. Next. So this is another detail of the inverted spiral. Next. Another view from the upper terrace. Next. That's next. You can see because they have a height restriction, we have to put the air conditioning within the beam. That's another detail. Next. Right. Next. So then I was asked by somebody it's in 20 perches, I don't know how, it's 500 square meters, which had a large banyan tree to build a house. I had built 2 other projects for them. So you enter, this is the garage, you enter here, but you see 2 other trees. So there were 3 trees on the side, which I preserved. Okay, I cut 2 branches of the banyan tree. So you enter here, this is the living dining space, and we are 30 feet above the neighbor. So you borrowed their landscape. So you're 30 feet above the neighbor, and there's a bedroom ground floor. This is the pantry, service veranda, this, and there's a domestic room and a toilet there. Next. Next. Yeah, yeah. No, go back one. So here, when you go onto the upper floor, you have a large family room with a tree growing through that. There's a master bedroom and toilet. And the guest room I put here because if you draw the curtain, you can see the tree. So all the main rooms are related to the tree, which is in one corner of the site. Next. So that's the tree growing up, which to a veranda upstairs. Next. So you can see that is a neighbor's tree, but we are above the this thing, and that's a garage, and these are this cassia tree, living dining. Next. So that is from the road, because that's a neighbor. If you go, you can't, the building almost disappears. Next. So you can see that is a building. Now in this whole, that's the, banyan tree, and that is the building, and that's a neighbor's tree. Next. So that's the entrance. Next. That is through the entrance you could see the cassia tree. Next. That is the pool of water, and that is the tree belonging to the neighbor at the bottom. Next. That's a bubble, and that's a banyan tree growing. Next. Banyan tree growing with a bubble fountain here. Next. the banyan tree growing like that. Next. That's a pantry looking into the dining area. Next. There's the other cassia tree growing through the roof. Next. Next. That's from the toilet, the master bedroom toilet looking into the toilet of the guest room up on the opposite side of the courtyard. Next. That's another detail. Next. That is from the toilet looking at the banyan tree, upper toilet. Next. Then looking into the pool downstairs with fish. Next. So you can, as you grow, the tree grows over the thing. And I had to just cut 2 branches here. We did a maquette. We did a life-size frame of the house before we decided to go ahead with it. Next. So that is the view, and the owner was a pilot. His grandchildren come and play Tarzan here. Next. And that's a veranda. So one of the problems you get with 3-story buildings is that how can you enjoy other people's thing without being obstructed by their water tanks. Next. So this is the neighbor's tree which I borrowed. Next. So that is a water tank, but you don't really see it. Next. So that is a diya. It actually comes from India. Next. So I suddenly get a call from somebody saying, so-and-so is going to come from Hong Kong on Sunday morning. Can you keep yourself free? So I said, I'm very sorry. I don't work on Sundays. I go swimming with my friends. So he said, so anyway, he thought I was very rude, which probably I was. And so this guy who headed the Ogilvy and Mather for the whole of Pan Pacific, actually on Saturday went to see a beauty parade of servant architects, all whom he didn't quite feel. And then this gentleman said, there's a very rude, obnoxious architect called Anjalendran. I don't think you'll want to meet him. And he said, no, sounds interesting. Can you organize for me to go and see him before I fly tomorrow night? So my engineer, those days there was no expressways, goes to see his mother, widowed mother, because they had an estate. But those days it used to take 5 hours to go and 5 hours to come back because there's no expressway. Now you can do it in 2 hours both ways. So I said, I can't meet you because he was coming in an entourage. I didn't want to meet him alone. So he came and he then fell in love with my house. So I interviewed him and I said, I can't do style, I can't do this, I can't do that, and this, that, and that. So that was fine. So he said he wanted me to build a house for him. So he agreed to go. So this is the road. There's a railway station and it goes up and it had a magnificent views of sunset and a magnificent views of hills. So it had also 2 bends. So I had actually done a project. I actually designed that. All the others, I have done this project over about 16 years. There are 2 bends and we did a shrine here. It is in a cinnamon estate. Okay, cinnamon is unique to Sri Lanka. Most people who think there's a little bit grown in Kerala, but most people who think cassia in the Western world, what is really thought to be cinnamon is a plant called cassia, which has none of the subtleties of cinnamon. So Miles was a historian. So he quickly picked this up, and so we did a visitor center here, the manager's quarters here, and the agricultural, laborers' quarters here. So there was a range of buildings to decide, which are very, very exciting because in my life I've only done one commercial building, which is a departmental store in a place called Sucker in Karachi. Next. So this is, I can draw like this. I can't draw anything better. So I actually did it so that when you come up, you see a sunset. You had an informal living, formal living, dining. He wanted a screen, but we agreed. Then this is the pantry thing, and there was a 2 bedrooms here, and the master bedroom here, and this was a view of mountains. So he had a study and a master bedroom. Now, when he said, let's have a drink, he's an Englishman, so he said, let's have a drink before dinner. So I said, look, I've got a proposal. So we did this because I said I wanted to go and see the site in the night also and at dawn. So when we went to the site at night, it was lovely because you saw fireflies here. And at dawn, you saw the sunrise here. And this building was set out, and this was built exactly as I had designed it. I felt really bad because going back, I told Miles, I've been rather rude. I haven't asked you what your brief is. He said, no, you just build what you have shown me. I'll be very happy with it. So I think it's very good to train your clients to do what you want rather than you doing what the clients wants. Next. So this is, I proposed an art gallery at the bottom, accessible by the two ends. Next. So as usual, this is a drawing done. You can see there's no changes except I did a pavilion here. So your perception of the land from here, the pavilion is on your left. So when you're outer dining, the pavilion is on your right. So your perception, the pavilion changes your perception as to where you are. Next. So you can see it's on top of a hill, and the pavilion anchors the building. A lot of people wonder what ties the building down, and in this building, it is a pavilion which happened intuitively after the initial design. Next. So this is the main entrance. You can see that these are granite slabs. Granite is still worked in Sri Lanka. These are all material available in Sri Lanka. Next. So you can see that's a pavilion and you see the sea. But see, when you come here, next, that is your cross view. So this is me now beginning to do an architecture which is minimal, but which respects the view. And I think that is how architecture should be, not the building. Everyone thinks that architecture is a building. And I actually am beginning to start understanding that architecture is something that should be invisible. Next. So this is, you go there again. Next. This is a sculpture done by Lucky Senanayaka, which wasn't a wall, but which my client accepted finally, which could be a divider between the lounge and the dining. Next. That is it in the night. Each of these we got, these are done by a potter. The throat was done by a Swiss designer, and that was done by somebody else. But the client and I collaborated with this. This is not only mine, we bought everything together. And it was great fun. So this is called the Enchanted Forest. And I'm afraid to say that Lucky died a year ago too. These are the people who surrounded Bava. There were 3 people, Ina De Silva, Barbara Sansoni, Lucky Senanayaka. And they were integral to all the work that Jeffrey did. And I seem to be the last people they seem to have interacted with. Next. These are old Dutch doors. They're about 300-400 years. That's a German designer called Klaus. Next. That is Klaus's sculptures. Next. That is sunset with the pavilion. Next. That is the pavilion again. Next. So that is the sunset hitting the veranda. Next. This is a sculpture using disused car parts called the Flying Horse in the gallery below. Next. This is being exhibited at Museum of Modern Art, Sri Lanka, done with bottle top saying friends, local friends. Next. This is with the war, army guy going into the wall. Next. This is a bedroom. This is by a lady called Drewinka who studied at Shantiniketan. Next. So these are, you must know that generally in Sri Lanka it's sensible to build with verandas on either end. Depending on the monsoon, your room is safeguarded. The monsoon only hits here. Next. So that's a view and the landscape. Next. So we sometimes have one peacock, sometimes seven. Next. Next. So this is a visitor center. Next. That is it's a courtyard building. With we wanted the domestics to live here, but I think it was so good, the views, that they decided to make it a upgraded thing. And at that time, things like villas were coming in. So we had a demonstration kitchen, a cinnamon museum, and a dining room there. But there are 4 rooms below. This is a phoenix representing the death of. He builds his pyre out of cinnamon sticks, and out of which a new phoenix comes. Next. So here I designed the lamp, which is based on the Vesak lantern, under which where they celebrate Vesak with the birth, death, and the enlightenment of the Buddha. But again, something was missing. But these tie the spaces together again. Next. So it was also very difficult. This is a plan. They finally said that when the main building is rented out, because Miles only comes very rarely, they wanted another extra pool. And this is a very difficult exercise because cinnamon is done on steeply sloping sites which you can't use for anything else. So next. So this is what I mean, Jeffrey Bauer excels in a thing called place making, where buildings, as I said, become a part of nature. So this is a pool, and you can see that there's a drop of about 25 feet. Next. So that is the pool, a perspective. You come down here. Next. And that is the pool. Next. So these are these slightly difficult but not impossible. Next. So you can see there's an infinity, but it blends into the landscape. Earlier you could see the sea, but not anymore. Next. And very simply detailed. It doesn't demand attention. It is meant to become invisible. Next. Yes, next. So this is the cinnamon peelers. So suddenly you wanted to build a building with the cinnamon peelers, because all other casts ignore the cinnamon peelers are right down the bottom of the list. So no other caste would go to use the same toilet, cohabit, or eat with them. So this got a World Architecture Award, and so this is where they peel the cinnamon, and this is where they live. Next. So you can see it is that cinnamon is done with, this is laterite, that is cut earth. Next. So this is cement blocks with glass in the middle. Next. That is the cinnamon peelers. You dry the cinnamon, they cut the cinnamon, they do quills, they dry the cinnamon, and then they package it and send it. Next. So these are old doors and windows bought very cheaply. Next. Right, next. So that's laterite, just cement painted walls, not painted, plastered walls. Next. So this is known as Anjalendran detailing to add some luster to the staircases. Next. Each of those tiles are 1 rupee. Sri Lankan rupees is probably 2.5 Indian cents. So these are, you can see it frames the tree. Now that's what it's all about. It's not this that matters, it's a frame that matters. Next. So this is the laborers' houses, which is 100,000, yes, 125,000 Indian rupees. It has a 2-bedroom room. The boys sleep in the outer veranda. The girls sleep in with the female children here. That's again kitchen I put so that they can all control the central court. There's a storeroom, because I think the poorer person you build, a storeroom becomes more important. There's an outer toilet, because toilets then don't become an interior smell which may be smelly. Next. So this is it. Again, I mean, I told you the price of this. It was 125,000 Indian rupees. Next. So here, these are the atmosphere, you can say, of it. Next. Next. This is the kitchen, where she can control If one mother is there, she can control the children playing. Next. These are the built-in beds, that is to study or watch television, and there are cupboards. Next. Next. And the cinnamon peelers built in this goddess Pathini. She's the goddess of the anklet. In South India, she is known as Kannagi. So this is the Pathini shrine, right, at one of the bends as a vista. Next. So this is Pathini. Next. That's a Pathini shrine. Next. At the other bend, I got my students to come and they designed this, which Miles gave a prize for, the architects, whatever he was paying. And then we developed the drawings. Next. Next. Yeah. We do a maquette, actual size maquette. Next. And that is the actual sculpture, right? That's my main contractor talking with me. Next. So then, curiously, you must know that everybody says, oh, very nice, you're doing these nice buildings. It's very romantic and so on and so on, but you can't do a departmental store. You can't do commercial buildings. So, you get slightly irritated. So I go to a place called Sakar, which is 800 kilometers north of Karachi. And it has these wonderful bridges and wonderful tile works from Mughal times. So this gentleman got up one day and said he was going to go to the best architects in Karachi. He went and met 3. He couldn't meet any of the architects. He had a 4th one in mind, but by that time he gave up. So what he did was he went to one place, he met the administrator. And the administrator said, how big is your land? So he said, my land is 20 perches. 20 perches in Pakistan is small land. A house, a general house in Pakistan is 30,000 square feet, right? You must know that 5% of the gross national, 95% of the gross national product in the Pakistan is in the hands of 5% of the population, right? 95% of the people are poor. That's what it means, So then they said 8 hours journey, 20 purchases of land, we can't do it. So he got that answer from 3 architects. So he said, okay, let me try this guy. And I said, no, I'll be delighted. Can you send me some pictures of your land, 360 degrees. So this is what he sent. Next. Absolutely next door to the site was these 2 Mughal monuments. One was a tower and the other was a pleasure pavilion. Now, how can anyone resist? Most people are asking, what is the size of the land? How much are you building? How much money can I make? I would have done, I almost did it for nothing. We didn't discuss it. He has promised me a trip wherever I want to go, but we haven't done that yet. But you found this slap bang next to the site. So you had a vista. You had a ready-made vista in an urban site. Okay, next. So I had done a design like this, but that got deleted by the council. I created a corner by which I could frame the view. So that's my client. He's called Amir Gauri. There they have contractor engineers. Next. So that is my building. It's a departmental store. These are double screens so that now for 2 years he couldn't afford air conditioning, but the people use the building because the hot air comes and goes up through an atrium. And that is, I think, the relationship of the building to the old Mughal monuments. Who gets an opportunity like this? Next. So this is the thing. That is where the view is. That's the atrium. This is a departmental store. There's a water harvesting below because it doesn't get too much rain. So all the hot air dissipates there. And these are the double screens by which the storeroom there, but there are double screens here, right, which cools the building. Next. So that is again the relationship of the building to the monument. And no one can build here because it's a part of the archaeological conservation zone. Next. So this is the double screen. Very simple. These are industrial perforations. Next. That's the atrium. Then I thought something is wrong to tie it together. Next. Okay, these are the views. And next. So I got somebody to design a chandelier, or mobile, if you like, of copper birds, which then ties all the buildings together. Next. Next. So yeah, anyway. This is a joke, but anyway. Next. So, what am I proposing? I'm proposing in the tradition of Baba, Baba never made any announcements of architecture, that one should actually do a sort of invisible architecture. It's not a tradition which demands attention. Okay? So, I'm showing you some of that. Next. So here I'm getting, this is a building with a C. That is a street expansion line. So here's a living, dining, and a bedroom looking at the sea, and there's another wall here. And that's a staff quarters because they are doctors. Right? Next. So this is the drawing. Next. Next. That's the reality. It's very much like the drawing. It's a single-story building in the beginning. It's underplayed. I can show you it against the buildings next door. You hardly notice it. Next. That is the entrance. The bedroom is here. The living, dining is here. Next. That's a kitchen at the end with a veranda dining. Next. That's a garage screen, and that's the entrance. You come looking at from. All these are traditional details. Next. But that is your view. Why do you need architecture? The most important thing is the view, right? Which can be shut. It's a different way because they had to always shut because you get, drug addicts walking the beach. Next. So for me, this is architecture, where it's a architecture almost is irrelevant to the main building. Okay. It is a respect of what you see and nature. Next. So that is the view again. That is a veranda. There's a upper veranda. Next. So that's the upper veranda. There's a planter so that I do a double colonnade so you can extend because there's a monsoon coming in. Next. And that is your view from the upstairs. I don't think it was important to do the building in gold. Next. So you're not going to believe that is my building, that is a school, and that's a church. You can't, it doesn't jump. Next. So this is another building on a tea estate. You enter here. This is a service area with a generator, and you go up and you see the whole countryside. Next. Next. So this is a building. There's a veranda here. There's a living, dining here. That's a pantry here. These are bedrooms. And that's a pavilion to create a foreground with this thing. And there's a car park there too. Next. So that's a peacock, this is a project, this is in the south of Sri Lanka, which has a shrine of Kataragama, which is Skanda, or the second son of Shiva. And I have a soft spot. I normally, if I try to say no, but if peacock intervenes, I generally say yes. Next. So that is going up with a copper handrail. Next. And that is your view. So you don't emphasize on the building, you frame the view. Okay. Next. So you can see these are other notions of a view. Next. Right. I got a stone lion, which I also have, but from the entrance you can see it. Next. That is me at a site visit, but I think that is what is important. The landscape. Next. I'm not creating the landscape or the view. It's there. I'm just respecting it. So this is the courtyard. We have a copper urn to put flowers. Next. Yeah. Then I have a client who is a member of parliament, And suddenly, because they won, so from 8 constituents a day, he suddenly has 200 constituents a day. So you need to provide toilets. So I do a building where the men can go this way and the females can go that way. And that's the interior, and they can also sit in a seat outside. Next. But what I have done is, uh, you can have a shower there. Uh, People can walk, but they are walking on a lower level. But from this area, you have views of a river and a landscape. So you can see here, you can go like this, right, to the toilet. There's a river, right, and it's a completely open toilet, but that is your view from the toilet. You see, this notion that everything precious and all should be given to rich people is not important. I think everybody has a right. This double standards, rich people get one sort of architecture, poor people get another sort of architecture, is not necessary. So this is, if you shower, you have this stunning view of a river, private view of a river and that sort of landscape beyond. Next. Then I actually did his building, because again a peacock sort of came into the way, and so it's at a lower level, but you go upstairs because that is where the garden is. And there's a sliver of a courtyard, because you have to do inverted prisons, meaning you can't kill a person where everything outside is solid. Next. So this is a plan. You enter here. You can park things here. You go up, and there's a courtyard with trees. There's a living dining. And there are only 2 bedrooms, and he has an office. And there's a kitchen, and his security quarters are there. Next. So that's another, you can see there's a drawing of a peacock. That's a lower level. Next. So that is you going up. Next. So that is your entrance. The Buddhist shrine is twisted to the east. Next. So that's a Buddhist shrine. We bought an old painting, temple painting. So that is his shrine room facing east. Sorry, next. And you can see we have mixed concrete and old timber columns. That is the veranda is granite, and we grew. It is only a slit to bring light and ventilation. Next. That is around the central courtyard. Next. Next. Yeah, so that's another view. Next. Another view. Next. So that is his living dining. I mean, the party he belongs to has green as his motto, and we bought paintings together. Next. And what is amazing is the day it was open, you get different people. The family sits in the first veranda, the police sit in the last veranda, and people in between sit in the formal living room. Next. Yeah, so this is the atmosphere. Next. Yeah, that's a dining formal living room. Next. 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 That is his office room. Right, next. That is his bedroom. But you must see that it's floating in the sky, so you borrow the landscape. Next. That's his toilet, view from his toilet, You actually, here you don't shower here, you're actually showering outside, looking at that view. And I think that is what life is all about. A lot of people, I don't know what they are building for, but here we build, or at least I build, and at least I have learned that Jeffrey built for the enjoyment of life and the pleasure of life. Next. And the difference may be that my clients are poor. I mean, they are not rich, they are ordinary people. Jeffrey's clients were not. So that is the view you get. So that I have to learn to borrow things so that the buildings itself are not very expensive. Next. So that's a guest room. That faces a veranda, and that's a courtyard. Next. That's a guest room toilet. And they're completely open. Next. So that's a old piece in the veranda. Next. So this, my domestic had served me 30 years. So I decided that I mean, I had extra money that I will buy some land next door and build him a house. And it's a good thing. I mean, he married his cousin and he now has adopted two of her brother's children and her mother who's not very well and so on. So I thought, okay, damn it. You know, the problem is that again, whenever I do things, one of the lessons you learn from SOS, I can live in an SOS house, and I have. Like I'm not doing charity now with Kuma. He's more of a brother to me than most of my relations, and I give him exactly what I can have. Right. So this is his house. Next. So you enter here. You have a courtyard. Here, I gave him 2 flats because maybe one day when I'm gone, I'm 70 now, then he can rent one and get an income. So I gave him my old Bajaj. So here's a living, dining, kitchen, toilet, bedroom, looking into courtyards. Similar thing you get above the garage an additional bedroom upstairs. There. So this is a very simple house. But it costs same per square foot as mine. Next, and done by the same contractor. Next. So there's a courtyard in the middle. So that's your view. Next. So that is your entrance view. That's Kalu again. And the staircase goes there. Next. So that's Katragam Skanda. Next. So that's from the courtyard looking at the entrance. Next. So that's his living, dining, right? Pantry. Next. And he actually has genuine antique cupboards and all, perhaps more expensive than the ones I have. I prefer simpler ones, but he gets elaborate ones. Next. That is Kuma. And these are all our genuine paintings. It's not less costly. Next. So that's his toilet. No different from mine. Next. That's from the garage. Next. So now we go upstairs. Next. That's his terrace. This thing. Next. That is the view from his terrace. Next. That is the upper room, which I have now, I use it as a library. So this is our dining room and the kitchen. The kitchen is not used. Next. That's a living room, upper living room. Next. So these are all this, the odd thing is now I decide to give the house to him. So the lawyer has to sign. So he comes sheepishly and says, "Sir," that's how they talk. You have life interest. So I said, "No, Kumar, I'm giving it to you. After you move in, you want to kick me out and not come and work for me, that's perfectly fine. But you have been with me for 30 years. You're like my brother. I don't think you'll do this. But if you do it, I don't mind. But these conditions, the modern life is about conditions. I have never signed a contract in my whole life. I've been working for 40 years. And that is another way of doing things, is that you begin to trust people. And those are those values which are important, not contracts. And because one of the great things about no contract is nobody can sue you because you have not signed anything. But anyway, but it's a different approach to life. Okay. I think I know contract, but you can override it. You must know that now in my father's life, people did large contracts with a shake of a hand, not a document. Their subordinates might have done documents later on, but they never did documents. Next. So that's one of my fascinating things. Next. So this, you're not going to believe, this sculpture cost 400,000 Indian rupees, but it is Kumar's. It's done by, he died, called Tisarana Singha. I took a year to pay for it. But everything here belongs to Kumar. Okay. Now I'm not very sure how many people will do that. There's this amazing thing called double standards. Next. Yeah, so this is one bedroom, the upper bedroom. Next. that is a toilet for that bedroom. Next. So that's a view. You can look at the courtyard from that bedroom. Next. This is the other bedroom. Again, that's with Skanda, which I took a long time to do. Next. That's in the garage, and that's a painting by Lucky Senanayaka. Next. Yeah, next. So this is the last thing I'm going to show you. I think I'm well in time. I was asked a couple of 2018 whether I would do a cancer hospice, because that's the sort of thing I would like. Of course, the lady is rather orthodox. So I actually follows the profile. It's a rural 100-bed cancer hospital. So you will find that there are wards, but they're open wards. There are no private rooms and all. It's a government hospital. So here, but the odd thing is that there's about 16 types of toilets. I mean, they haven't got over it. In Singapore, one toilet is used by everybody, cleaners, everybody. But here, they still have a hierarchy. So what I do is I do a double screen, double screen here, which gives more shade, in which I can put the air conditioners and an additional toilet if necessary, right? So there's the building follows the periphery of the site. There's a courtyard to give cross ventilation. We have a grill on the outside so that even if the windows are open, nobody can come in through the outside. It's lockable. There are 3 access. There's the soil treatment plant, and this is the ancillary building. It's going to be inaugurated on the 8th. Otherwise, I would have stayed longer in India. Next. So that's the upper floor. It's very similar. I mean, you can see it's a little clearer for that. Next. And that is the section. Next. That's the entrance. These are photographs taken about a month or 2 ago. You can possibly say, you can see a courtyard. That's a train going on. And this is a double screen into which I put air conditioners or whatever, occasional toilet, storeroom, and so on. Next. So you can see that this is the soil treatment plant. I'm doing a security hut there. Next. That's the courtyard. Okay, that's the entrance. Next. So now people can't. The thing is, I think that if, like I use colored SOS, I mean, we don't have things like radiotherapy. We only have chemotherapy. And these are rural folks who show cancer when it's too late. Okay? So the only thing you can do is not give them a peaceful, to give them a happy environment in which to spend the last days of their life, And that is what I try to do, So it's a little funny. I can tell you another story when we go a little further next. So this is the colors which I did, this shades. Then in a public building, you have to worry whether, if you do one sort of color, whether the opposite political party objects. So then you put both colors. Then they can't object to anything. Next. So yes, now these light fittings were designed by me. Next. That is the courtyard. I mean, very little maintenance. And I did enamel roofs. Next. So that is my contractor and me with this courtyard. Next. And then I actually decided to have a mural at the far wall. So now this lady, poor lady, Orthodox Tamil lady, and I have now bowled over with color, and she's not very sure whether I know what I'm doing. But luckily, Dr. Siyambalapitiya, who's the oncologist in charge of this hospital, he said, "No, madam, I have painted my house using his book, so that's fine." So at that point, everybody sort of keeps a little quiet. So I said, "I want a colorful mural." So then I said, "No, don't worry about it. I'll pay for it." Because I think that's one of the easy ways out. If you say you will pay for it, I was hoping she will say this. Then I get a message to say, this is a donation done in her name and her husband's name. She would like to go to heaven alone with her husband. So, meaning she doesn't want anyone else to partake of the merit by paying for something of the building. Then I think it took her about 6 months to think about it, and then she came and said, "No, you have been, I'm very happy with what has happened. You have permission to pay for the artist, and you can also come with us to heaven." So that's fine. Next. So I'm okay. Next. So this is an artist called Chamika, who also I helped when he was in a bad way because he had a heart attack and he had stents put in. He lost his job, but I've given him work for the last 3-4 years. He has a little baby, but I think an incredible artist. Next. So he manages, and this is almost complete. And I've been allowed to pay for it, but I'm now dying to get 3 more murals done, so I don't negotiate. Next. No, don't worry. Next. This is for Tipu Sultan's Palace in Bangalore. Next. Is one of my favorite buildings. Next. Okay, so I would like to end this very quickly. What is my attitude towards, I wouldn't say architecture, life, but because my life is an integral part of architecture, my favorite quotation, I'm just taking extracts from a poem by Jacques Brel, his French from 1968. I wish you endless dreams and the furious desire to make some of them come true. I wish you passions. I wish you silences. I wish you to be yourself, proud of it and happy, because happiness is our destiny. Thank you very much.